Thank you for hosting this and helping us to launch one of our briefs. So CEPAR does research, but then an important part of it is translating that research into a way that synthesizes it and brings it together and makes it as manageable as possible in terms of digestion for people who aren't themselves academics, but who are the end users, the stakeholders of the work that we do. And so today really had its genesis in the launch of a brief that was focused on cognitive aging and decline, insights from recent research. Now, I forgot to do this morning, so I'm going to do it at the start now. Some of you will have seen the brief already. Some years ago, during the period of the first CEPAR, we hired Raphael Chomik, and Raphael had come from the OECD, was essentially a pension economist, and he and I have written academic papers on pension economics in the time since he's joined CEPAR. But he has a kind of alter ego. He's a sort of frustrated graphic designer, and he has produced the most amazing series of these research briefs. So he has a sort of team of 2 or 3 people, but they do this work, and the visuals, I think, are outstanding. But as well, he's extraordinary at being able to synthesize material from a variety of different disciplines, not just economics, which is his training, but from psychology and other areas as well. And so the briefs have actually had quite a big influence in Canberra and elsewhere, and we're hoping that this will also raise the profile of this issue in a way that would otherwise not be possible. So what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of context around the demographic, the population dynamics, which underpin the concern that people are now feeling around cognitive decline and dementia. Back in 2010, when the first CEPAR was funded, population aging didn't have quite the presence in the public mind that it has today. In fact, there were only 3 countries in the world in 2010 where more than 20% of the population was over 65. They were Japan and Germany and Italy. And actually that occurred not because people were living longer, which is one of the demographic kind of imperative which drives cognitive decline, but rather fertility decline. So the fertility decline that we observed in Australia in the 60s, that happened in the 50s in these countries. And so that's why they're the oldest. When you get to 2050, this is what that map looks like. And so 2/3 of the world, all of North America, China, Russia, all of Europe, quite a large slab of South America, all those countries will have crossed this threshold of more than 20% of the population being more than 65 years old. This is built upon UN data, right? UN do these projections of what population structure will look like. And of course, some of it depends upon the fertility behavior of women who haven't yet been born. And so you have to treat it with a little bit of a grain of salt. But I think the broad thrust of this story is correct. The UN describes this process as unprecedented, enduring, pervasive, and profound. Unprecedented because it's never happened before, enduring because it's going to keep on happening, pervasive because it's happening everywhere, and profound because it affects every aspect of our lives. So CEPAR tries to look at all those aspects. One of the aspects is cognitive decline. Others are around mature labour market or around lifelong learning. So there's a health. There's a lot of different areas, but a very important one is this question of cognitive decline. If we just think about Australia, this is the reason, and we look at what the population dynamics are in Australia over that 40-year period, the 85 pluses more than quadruple in number over that period. And that is really the underpinning demographics for the expanding incidence of dementia. And of course Australia isn't alone, as I've just demonstrated. So if you think of the Asian region, be 250 million people over the age of 80 by 2050. That's more than half the world population of 80 plus year olds in 2050 will be in Asia. So the feature of Asia is that it's not old at the moment, but it's aging extremely rapidly. And so countries really aren't ready to cope with this kind of emerging phenomenon that they will confront, and they'll confront it quite suddenly, become aware of it quite suddenly, and there will be, I think, scrambles in terms of policy responses. So what do we do about numbers of people with dementia? Well, these are the projections, and you can see we've tried to put together a number of different projections going back a while. So there's a projection there from 2004, and then one from 2005, and so forth. And what you notice about these different projections is that each successive projection has more people projected to have dementia by any given target date. Like we've got 2050 there at the outside. And in 2004, we thought that by now we might have 250,000 people in Australia with dementia. In fact, the number's 440,000 from memory. Even in New South Wales, it's 140,000. And so that's going to go up a lot over the next 30 years, and that's a big challenge. But it's a challenge which we can go some way to meeting, and that's really the point of the major speakers who are going to follow me this morning, that there are ways of reducing the incidence of dementia, and there are other interventions which we can bring to bear to reduce the consequences of cognitive decline on, for example, decision-making. I think this link between decision-making and cognitive decline is really interesting, and there are people within CEPAR, including both the speakers to follow, psychology and economics, but also other people within CEPAR, like Mike Keane, who's about to come back from Oxford to join CEPAR, who can work together to try to give us a real sense of how confusion can damage decision-making and what we might do about it. And I see that really as a major interdisciplinary initiative over this next period.